with all these pieces, these are in really good shape. I did want to point out, if you do see Yamaha on the back of these, you can know that the guitar is made in Taiwan. However, if it says Yamaha Japan, it's pretty obvious at that point it's made in Japan. But these are the type of tuners, and they are excellent tuners. I mean, they're as good as a go-to, I mean, they're just great tuners. I mean, they really don't fail unless they've been hit or, whatever. But I take them completely apart and I put them in the same little can like this, because I spray a ton of WD-40 into it. It cleans it, lubricates everything, and it helps me when I'm finally doing all the final cleaning to get off any kind of rust or corrosion. I used to use it, and if it's extreme, this guitar has been actually really well maintained, and I'll give you an example. This Tremolo, I mean, there's almost no scarring. There's really no disgusting, pieces. This right here, you can tell there's just a little bit of pitting from over time. I don't know if some of these saddles had been replaced. Let's see if they are even. And they do not look like they are. They look like they're a little jacked up, but that might be because this is really close. And I'm going to show you a cool trick. Got to get the right size. Let me pause it. So here is the secret to seeing if your tremolo is set up properly. What you do is loosen all of these pieces. Now you do have to make sure that all of the screws go to the same spot. So this will probably have to be readjusted, maybe even put back in the back. But what we're going to do is we're going to push all of the saddles completely forward against the screws. Undo this. Bring the saddle forward. And you can see how dirty those pieces are. You can see it's like that's got gunk on it on one side. So it's been cleaned, but not 100% thoroughly cleaned, which is totally normal. But when I take these things apart, I get underneath them. This is a full-on, long time process. But as soon as you get all of the saddles forward, you shall notice the height differential. And it should be really obvious. Now the trick with this is you need to make sure that all of the saddles are all completely twisted down. That'll force all of them back. All right. Then look at it like this. And you should be able to see a nice rainbow right there. And it looks like this is correctly set up, because those are the two highest points right there, and then these are the mid points right here, and then that's the lowest point. It's sometimes you can see right here it's a little bit higher, and then it kind of stages down if it looks like it's a little bit of a staircase like that. So these will always be, because the radius of the fretboard obviously is gonna be rounded. Okay, so it has to be, the highest point has to be the middle right there. So that's why we need to make sure that this is set back up. So when I take all these things apart, and a lot of people get nervous in doing that, they won't put these things back in the correct order, and that will make a big problem for them. And again, I've said this in previous videos on other guitars that were even the same exact tremolo. This is the TRS Pro, which is actually on my 820R. It's on my plaid guitar. It's on this. So I guess this is their top of the line kind of edge tremolo from what Ibanez made. It's a great tremolo. Anyways, so I'm going to take this whole thing apart and clean it up. That's how you do that. So if you ever have a problem, I'll give you an example. I'll kind of screw this up. This is what you would look at. Sorry. I'll just make it really super obvious real quick. I'll swap this one with this one. Pop that out. Just so you can see. And this is what it'll look like when it's problematic. And an amateur will make this mistake every day. You see that? Now you can see how obvious the problem is. Okay? So you see it's like a big stair like this and a big stair like this. So I've seen them all over the place where they're like, this one was here and this one was over here, and just the string placement on there. It doesn't matter how much you adjust the trem and do whatever you think, it's the guitar is going to play completely jacked up. So anyways, this is a very normal thing for anybody that takes it apart. If a tech decides to screw with somebody that they don't like very much, they can take apart the tremolo and put it back together and give it to them like that. It's a real dick move, but anyways, this is just something that if you ever want to check and see if a guitar at a pawn shop was ever doing something wacky and everything like that, you can't really take apart the tremolo while you're at the guitar store, but you can take a look down the edge of it and stuff like that, and you can see if it's got any staggering problems. Now, I will say this, sometimes the saddles themselves are actually height, like this right here. Let me take this thing off so you can see the platter difference. So I'm just going to take all these pieces just to show you. Put that in there, pop that in there. Well, I'm going to take the little screws out, but I got to get another one for that. Anyways, but I'll just show you that this right here, and by the way, these pieces right here that hold the strings in place, those are not any specific order. I try to keep them together in the same spot because they're kind of used to it, and some pieces, if you pop them out, won't fit the same. But anyways, just look at this platter right here. It's completely flat. There's nothing to build this thing up. So the actual height differential is going to be in these saddles themselves. So these are going to determine the actual height, and you can see how small that one is compared to that. But that's something that you need to be aware of. Other saddles, when you're replacing them, if you ever had to replace parts on these type of things and you go online to try to get those replacement parts, be aware that some tremolos will actually have this platter will be staggered. So that if you buy these and they're staggered on top of a platter that's already staggered, that's when you're going to run into some major problems with your tremolo, and it just never will really work properly. So if you've taken apart as many of these things as I have to restore them, you'll notice a whole bunch of weird anomalies with all of these. But you can see that's kind of, it's not super dirty, but I'm going to clean this thing up and just make it absolutely gorgeous. I'm also going to polish this. It's totally unnecessary, but I do it anyways, and make it look like a mirror. But that's it. There's only a couple little pieces. You do not have to remove this. You really can't get to that. I mean, that's almost like welded on there. But this will come off with just taking these screws off, which are really easy to get off. They're very thin. Also, the fine tuners are kind of riveted in a way on the back. So when you unscrew them all the way, they will not come out. Hopefully they stop. So you don't have to worry about those things ever falling out. Sometimes you will see tremolos that have lost those pieces. I think somebody was just forcing them and they just broke. So now we got this piece out. So that's the main platter. This is the spring for the fine tuners, and then this is the plate. So once you get at that, it can only go back in one direction because obviously this is where the tremolo is actually going to go in. So it's going to fit like that back on the guitar, and you can see that it's pretty easy how it lines up. So anyways, that's how all that works, and then we'll start with polishing this and put it all back together. But hopefully that little tip helped you out in the meantime in putting back together your tremolo, so you don't have any fear of doing this kind of stuff, because you should definitely know how to set up your own guitar. If you can tune your guitar, you should do this. All right, perfect example of why I like to take these things apart. Some people would think that's insane. Why would you take this out? You could lose pieces, you could do all sorts of stuff. Nah. Okay, here's the reason why. As soon as I took this piece apart, this came out of it. That is a huge hunk of a string, okay? So that right there is going to impede this and how it functions over time, because if it gets stuck, then this thing will actually not move forward or back, and it'll either hold the string or bend the string, or some burr will stick out. But my point is I take these things apart because of that exact situation. So call me crazy, call me overdoing it, whatever. But that's the reason why I do this. Now, this actually has this little tab on it, which is sometimes they break off for whatever reason. Let's take apart another one. See, this one is a little bit free floating, so we'll just take that off. And sometimes they don't want to come out right away. Dump that in there, but it will come out. Okay. So this one was pretty clean, but it does feel like, yup, a little piece of string right there, just stuck in there. So each one of these things, now there is a specific way that they need to come back out, okay? Again, these are actually really clean, so it was a nice job. But do you see how there's like a little hole in there, and that's where this will align. So when it finally fits into the hole, it'll sit properly in there and get pushed in. So when these things go back, the flat side holds the string in, and then this will go like that, okay? But that is a perfect example. So I'm going to dip that in there, put these guys in smear. This is absolutely the reason I do this. No, nothing in there. It's good. Let's see if we find anything else. This one doesn't want to come out very much. Okay. That's fine. Channel's clear. That thing's stuck. Now these actually turn very well. So again, like I said, this guitar, whoever owned it before me, took very good care of it. But these maintenance type of things, I don't think they were ever done. So just a thought. If you buy a used guitar, you may want to go through this extra step to go through these things. So that's it. All right, so that's pretty much it. There's no real parts left on this guitar. Everything is in here. This is pretty much the guts of the guitar. The electronics are side. This is the original Tremolo arm, which is also very cool. Those are rare, because most guitars, when they're sold, are never including the tremolo arm. Groovy. All right, so we got everything we need. We'll start working on this. I'm not going to show you very much, but I'm just going to show you use steel wool with a little bit of WD-40. I mean, this stuff cleans up incredibly fast. Doesn't require very much at all. And then a little bit of a wipe. And you'll never see this inside the guitar. So this is absolutely an unnecessary step unless you're psychotic like me. So enjoy. Little tip on steel wool. This is what they call 4/0, 4 zeros. Okay, this is double aught. You can probably tell that this is a much thicker thread. This is a much finer thread. You do not want to clean anything with this. Okay, this right here is a very this is. They call it very fine, but this is the super fine stuff. Now, the reason I mention this is because I use steel wool on these tremolos, on these parts right here. Okay, now when I do that, I take a little piece of it. Okay, and you should be wearing a mask right now. I am not. But what you do is take a little bit of, where is my, here we go, WD-40, and this will lube the surface, and also the WD-40 acts as a cleaner. So if you just use this, and I am barely putting any pressure on this at all. Really, I'm not even putting pressure on this. I'm just rubbing it down. That's all I'm doing. I'm just kind of massaging the oil into the crevices, the pits. And what the steel wool is really doing is just almost like an abrasive paper towel at best. Okay, because you can discolor this and ruin the finish. You can take it out. But if you're trying to get a really high cleaned polish, again, this WD-40 is lubricating it, so it's helping prevent any kind of scratches or marring or anything like that. Going around this on the back, places that never get cleaned. And here, the back here. Okay. All right. So once we've done that, the rest is uber simple. Take a Lysol wipe. It's got some cleaner. This will help remove the WD-40, get the grease off of it. Again, I would recommend at this point to be using the gloves. Once we've got that done, get all the junk off. pieces. La, 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 la. I know this is so interesting that you have nothing to do, but if we're quarantined and watching this, you're probably asking for more because you're bored as hell. Anyways, so that's got all the massive amounts of gunk off. Take a dry paper towel. And that's it. This thing will be super cleaned. I'm ready for battle. That's it. In great condition now. So that's how I like to put them back together, is like that. And you can actually polish this a little bit more, which it's a little bit dull. So I might actually use a little bit of a rubbing compound, which is very, very fine, but I can polish this out so you see what's kind of almost like a little bit of haze. I can get that to look like a mirror, which is what I'll do next. All right, so this is where it gets a little loud. Now this right here, as you can see, it's got a little bit of flexibility for this, but I use this as my main buffing wheel. You need to be very careful of this situation, okay? These teeth right here on these old school style drills, this is a really old skill drill, but it works great. They can catch on certain things, and if you're polishing with a very, very small wheel like this, if you get really close to an edge and it tries to pull because it's obviously going in this direction, these teeth could hit whatever object you're doing and it will chunk. And you will just be very pissed off. So anyways, I'm just going to show you just real quick what this will look like if I buff that out just to get that haze off. See the difference? The haze is completely gone. So that's what I'll do with the entire pieces and everything like that. And I even do it with this to make it look amazing. And I've got two of these. This is more for the rougher colored, or the coarser compounds and stuff like that. And you don't need to do very much. But again, I pushed like a feather on there, and I didn't even put any rubbing compound. That's just what was residual. But you can see how much prettier that is. You can see how much more haze that has versus like that. So anyways, skill drill bit, you know, it's one of those throwaway drills. I'm sure you probably have one in your garage right now. Hardest thing to do is ever locate the chucks for these. But anyways, that's how you can get those things to look absolutely brand new. Here's the fine polish. Don't need a lot. Yeah. And that's why you have to be careful because of that. So anyways, but that's pretty cool, right? Looks a hell of a lot better than that. I'm not even done with it. Yeah. But anyways, I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. I'm sure you don't really care, but you can see how the outer edges are this kind of like raw thing, and then this right here is actually a really nice, clean, smooth finish. But it looks rad. Neat. So this is what it looked like cleaned from where it started, and this is what I got it to afterwards. So that's pretty cool. If I worked on it even harder and everything like that, I could actually get it to look more of a mirror, but I think that's plenty. Again, it's going to be a part. I mean, you can see it is reflective at this point, but I just don't care that much. I'm just going to, this is completely dull. You can't see any reflection in that. Where you can see that. You can even make out where it says Lysol. But again, just depends on how much time you want to spend on doing something like that for a part that nobody will ever actually see, but that's the level of meticulous stuff I do. Why? Of course, we're in lockdown. What the hell else are you going to do in day 35 of quarantine? Yeah. So there you have it. That's the final result. I'm happy with that. You can see the back is now reflective. A little bit, not Not a huge amount. You can see the difference in colors in this, but you know, from where it started, it's much prettier. So anyways, just something I do. You don't have to, but that's what I do. And I use these same type of compounds and all sorts of things for polishing these pickups. That's kind of the trick that I use. I start with that, and then it's really not difficult. You just start with this one, with the buffing compound, and finish up with the swirl remover, which is this, the Scratch Doctor. And you only need a little bit of this stuff, and that's about it. So we'll go ahead and start on the pickups next. I'll put all that stuff back together. But boom! Fuckle! So I guess what I'll do is I'll show you right now. You can put together these last pieces right here, and if you just look at them from a certain angle, you can pretty much tell before you have to put them together, if the arch is correct. I did want to point this out because some people will look at the back of these things and get really confused. I used to think that they were numbered for a reason, but I'm just going to hold these together so you can see. All right, let's take a look. So as you can see, this upside down, and I apologize, but you can see there's a stamp of a 4, then there's a stamp of a 5, and so you'd think that it would be there, but then there's another 2, and then there's a 2, and then there's a 1, and that looks like a 4. So this would be very, very confusing. I think those stamps are what machines they came off of. One thing to show you that this is actually neat, I just realized this. This actually has one line that has 2 and that has 3 in the center. So that's how they're supposed to be staggered. So that's actually easiest. So I didn't even know this. I don't know if they all have that before. I've never noticed that until I just looked at it just now. I don't know how I've overlooked that, but I don't think every tremolo has those little stamps where there's the 3, so it shows you the gauge. But just to give you an example, you can see how that's a 5 and that's a 4. That has nothing to do with the 2 centers because one of them would be a 4, but not one of them wouldn't be a 5. So don't use these numbers. I think the stamps really just have to do with what machine they came off of, whatever press. So if they ever had any quality control issues, I bet you that's how they would be able to find out which one was the problem. But this right here definitely tells you the height of the strings. So that's the cooler part. So if you ever need to know, look over this, and that's an easy way to flip them over and do that. So that'll actually save some time. So anyways, let's just go ahead and put this thing back together. Get this camera up a little bit. All right. Okay, cool. So what we'll do is start with these little pieces. Remember that the whole side, sometimes these things don't have these little tabs. So when you put them back in there, they can fall out easier with these tabs. These things help keeping them from fall out. But you want to make sure that this is facing in this direction and this tab is on the bottom so it kind of hooks in. So we'll put these together like that. It'll drop perfectly in. And then we'll go ahead and put in this. Whoops, it's easier to do with my other hand here. And you just wash, rinse, repeat, and just push it in as much as you can. That's just hold it in, so now it's not going anywhere. All right, cool. So I'll do all those and put that together for all those pieces. But I'll go ahead and put this tremolo plate back together so you can see how this works. This will go underneath like this. The holes line up pretty. It's pretty obvious when you put them back together. And then you can just kind of put in a center screw to hold this in place. And remember that this piece right here, it only goes in one way. So those are the screw holes, but this goes like that. So you'll basically, the block itself, I'm going to fit it over the correct way, but the block itself is going to face forward. So we need to have this actually go like that, which is actually funny. It seems like it's actually backwards. I didn't think of that. So anyways, it's pretty basic how this thing goes together. But that's how the plate ends up. I need a screwdriver. So you can get the first one just to hold in. You can kind of use a screwdriver to just kind of move these little holes. That way when you're putting in the plate screws, they'll go down there pretty easy. bump the camera when I'm doing this. Da-da-da. And that's really the hardest part. Looks like I've got somebody calling me. All right, so once this is all back together, you can see it's real nice and pretty. But that's it. All right, so give it one more wipe down. Keep it all clean underneath. Guess I have Dream Theater as my ringtone, so do that, do what you will. And there we go. So everything is nice and clean. All right, so that's the basics of the Tremolo, and that's all we need to do to put it together. So the next thing to do is really just throw these guys in there one at a time. And then we'll take the lockdown screw and pop it in there. And that's all you need to do. Once you've already got the order of these set, and I just showed you that those little hex lines actually do all that for you. That's it. This Tremolo is basically on its way back to being put together. Intonating is a whole other gig, which I'll show you how to do, but once you've got them all together, that's a functioning Tremolo. Beauty. So there you go. That's what a fully restored 28-year-old Tremolo looks like. Pretty incredible. Does not look like a 28-year-old Tremolo, does it? No. That's if you just take some time and do your craft to it and maintain it. I mean, I do this to every single one of my guitars, new or old, whatever. And obviously, if you play the hell out of it, you know, you're going to wear off certain types of things. But, you know, if you keep your stuff in good working order and clean that stuff off, you can keep your parts in great shape. Nobody would ever suspect that would be a 28-year-old piece. Right there. That's pretty incredible. So I'm pretty happy. This is what I mean by wear and tear. There's just nothing you can do about this kind of stuff. It's just, you know, just touching it, just acid, whatever. Not worried about it, but I think it looks great. Me too.